You're listening to the Downshift podcast, where four mates from Melbourne take you trackside for all the action in Formula One, breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you want to support the team, leave us a 5-star review. So let's get into another action-packed episode. It's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. Hello and welcome to the Downshift. As you can note, today is presented by myself, KT, and joining me is Schwags, as two of the team are absent. Huppy and Locke have escaped the Melbourne winter and are sunning themselves on a beach somewhere, while Schwags and I freeze our butts off here in Melbourne. So how are you feeling, Schwags?
I'm feeling good. I thought it was actually cost of living crisis that you had to cut them from the team this week to save a bit of our staff expenses, but no, they're off enjoying some time away.
They'll be back for their review of Spa.
Back for the review of Spa. Yeah, they'll get to see it and let us know where we went wrong with our cracking predictions. Just will say before we get too far into it, we wanted to shout out to Bedell 1963 for commenting on our YouTube video. I appreciate your support and thanks for your encouragement. And hopefully we can give you some more good viewing in the future.
Always great to hear from our listeners and, what they think of the podcast and what we can do more of. So, yeah, again, thank you. So, Schwags, before we get into what's coming up, we've had a bit to cover off over the last 2 weeks. We've gone into a bit of a mini break from F1 before we get into a double header.
Yeah, it was the mini break that was certainly not very quiet, sort of expecting to be, missing a few Formula One races for a couple of weeks as all the teams went and, regrouped for the next couple of races. Yeah, it's just kind of gone off on the off-track shenanigans, I suppose you'd call it, all over the place.
Yes, before we go into the official summer break, which is known and loved as silly season, where contracts are broken, drivers and teams negotiate for seats and talent for the coming season, and our social media feeds are awash with F1 drivers roughing it out on some yacht somewhere.
And speaking of yachts, KT, all eyes were on the yachts and plane movements around the Italian island of Sardinia. Everyone loves their flight tracker, don't they? Link up all sorts of things. So there's even rumours of Sofia Vergara, who was also in Sardinia at the time. So KT, can you see Max or Sofia at Mercedes?
Yeah, look, I definitely can't see Sofia Vergara as a co-driver in Mercedes, but look, we saw in Drive to Survive, Toto and Susie sitting down at breakfast at the tail end saying maybe we need to get Max on the phone, and so it's something which has been thrown out there for a little bit of pepper, let's call it, for, again, just to create the drama around F1, that Max would make a very good acquisition for Toto for the Mercedes team. Look, it opens up a lot of questions in regards to, what is the right mix for Mercedes. Obviously, as a team principal, you want to have the best driver lineup you can for the team to be able to perform. But I think it also talks about harmony within the team. And as we look at the Red Bull lineup at the moment, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, when you have such a seminal driver, someone who is just so good at what they do, it's a really fine balance in regards to how that driver works with a second driver, and we've seen that not work for Red Bull. So bringing that into Mercedes, I think that puts at risk actually unsettling the team, and you're going to see a massive shift that you'd need to Max Verstappen for the rest of the team, which would put out other drivers, but also upset the balance between the first and second driver as well.
Yeah, look, I kind of forgot about that comment of Toto Wolff's at the end of Drive to Survive last season, but I find it fascinating for someone who's quite, like Toto's always come across as a very professional and, straight shooter and calls it as it is. Like he said some big things, but he's actually backing them up. Like he isn't just saying stuff for the sake of, sort of just going to throw this little thing out here and, see what mud sticks. He's sort of he's obviously got a clear plan and a clear vision of what it's going to be like for Mercedes. You've done some comparisons here on if Max and Kimi were together in Mercedes, they'd be just second place ahead of Ferrari. But if George and Max were there, just based on points, they'd be clearly second above Ferrari. But, a lot of other stuff can happen around how two drivers get along, how the car performs with someone else at the helm. So, it's quite interesting. So you'd like to think they're going to look after George still, because he's performed well this year. He's certainly not a poorly performing driver that deserves to be shown the back door to, see you later. So what do you that begs the question, what do you do with Kimi if that's the case?
Yeah, and look, as you're talking about George, you look at George and from that perspective is a driver who's one been in the shadow of Lewis Hamilton and outperformed Lewis for the last couple of seasons as well. Then as Lewis has gone to Ferrari, you've seen Kimi come in and George has stepped up as a leader in that team. He's making good strategic decisions, and we'll talk about Spa shortly. But I mean, even if you look at Spa last year, it was George who actually put forward, let's do a one-stopper, which actually had him take the win in the race. So he's makes good strategic decisions. He's got a good read of the sport. He's taken Kimi under his wing, and so he's been looking after him, developing him, guiding him as well. So from that perspective, you've actually got a solid performing driver who knows what he's doing. He's been brought up through the ranks, through Williams, through Mercedes, and done really well. And as you're talking about, Schwags, when you look at the points, McLaren's sitting there at 460 points at the moment in the championship to date. We've got Ferrari sitting there in second place with 222 and Mercedes sitting at 210, so nipping on the heels of Ferrari. But if you were to throw Max and Kimi together, you're looking at 228 points. That would put you just ahead of Ferrari. Now, obviously, if Max comes over, he's not going to bring the points from Red Bull. But if you just look at if that was the driver pairing for the start, they would only be marginally ahead of Ferrari by 6 points. Whereas if you put a George and Max combination together, you're looking at 312 points. So a clear second place position. Not challenging McLaren, but we've seen how dominant McLaren is this year with both Oscar and Lando. But it definitely puts them in a solid second position with Ferrari not even in contention.
By the numbers, it's a good decision. And I know, you're right. Like, it's not just about the numbers, and they're not going to come across. And you look at next year, there's a different set of regulations, and cars are going to change, and all sorts of things. But it's funny, everyone heard it and go, "Oh, what? Max to Mercedes." But then you sort of think about it and go, "Oh, yeah, you know what? I think he's onto something here. He's really thought this through."
So if you look at those three possible pairings, where would you go with that, Schwags?
Well, I mean, I thought Aston Martin was the pick just because of Adrian Newey, and I think that the aura that surrounds him and what everyone's expecting out of him in the 2026 Aston Martin car. Kind of thought that might be a bit of a hook for Max to go there, but in terms of looking at what's been happening with Red Bull and Joss, and I think there seems to be a lot of frustrations for them around the professionalism that is or has not been at Red Bull, and then stepping into a team like Mercedes or Aston Martin. Aston Martin haven't really shown their true colours just yet, but Mercedes is a neat, professional, well-run organisation. Max and Joss are going to be happy there. They're not going to be any team unprofessionalisms that are going to go on in that organisation.
So if you were having Max going to Mercedes, what would be the driver lineup look like for you?
Look, I like George. I'd want to keep George there, but I mean, look, you look at it, and we've spoken before about the investment that Mercedes have put into Kimi thus far. Like, it's there, and Kimi is, he's shaping up to be a very strong future prospect, and that will continue. It'll build. He's done well already.
Well, he's sitting seventh in the championship already.
Probably got a bit of growing to do. Like, I think, but mind you, look, what are we halfway through? So, like, he's not causing too many accidents. He's not crashing out too often. He's finishing a lot of races. He's just doing what he should be doing as let's say number 2 driver for Mercedes in his first year out. I think he's doing everything right.
Yeah, given that it's his first year out, like yourself, I mean, I'm a big fan of Handsome George, and I think he's earned the right to have a long-term contract with Mercedes. So we know that Mercedes has offered him a 1+1. I think that's a bit of an insult, to be honest. I mean, with the way he's performing, he deserves to be offered something a little bit longer. So the question comes down to what do you do with Kimi? And from that perspective is we're seeing a shift for the 2026 regulations where Alpine is no longer going to be running a Renault power unit. They're actually going to Mercedes in regards to their new power unit. So I think this is an opportunity where you could potentially put Kimi into Alpine and have him cut his teeth a little bit more in the Alpine. And then what you could do is you could have a really strong lineup going into 2026 with George and Max. Kimi developing himself in Alpine, have George and Max for a couple of years, seeing how that goes. And then, who's to say what happens in 28, 29? You could have George headhunted by someone else or go somewhere else and have Kimi come up and again have another really strong pairing there. Or you could have another interested party who are wanting to buy Max out.
Does Kimi need to cut his teeth anywhere, though?
I don't think it matters where he cuts his teeth.
My question is, does he need to at all? Like he's I'm trying to see what he's done, not wrong, but what he's not doing right thus far that needs him to be, going elsewhere for a period of time, other than to keep the George fans happy.
Yeah, look, I'm not suggesting that he's doing badly. 7th in the championship is very good for a rookie. He's light years ahead of the rest of the crew. I mean, the next person in line is Isaac Hadjar in 11th position. So, from that perspective, he's performing very well.
Sorry, riddle me this. Is Alpine a step backwards for Kimi? Based on their current performance, it feels like it could be. But, like I said, Mercedes power unit, new regs next year.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole thing is, I mean, that's you look at Yuki Tsunoda with Honda, and I mean, there's a whole lot of conversation around Yuki not having a drive for next year because Honda's going away from Red Bull. They're going into Aston Martin. There's not a seat there for Aston Martin. So there's the whole conversation around this could be the final year for Yuki Tsunoda. If you've got Toto who's got
because of an engine. Yeah.
Because of an engine. Yep.
Yeah.
And the backing, I mean, ultimately F1, this is all about cash. And if you've got Honda who's willing to back a driver, same with Mercedes. For Toto, if he can have drivers that he owns and go into other teams as well, he's creating a stable of drivers that he can pull on at any time. This is where Franco Colapinto, as an example, was loaned out to Williams last year to just get some races under his belt. Now, for Kimi, it's all about experience. So if you're sitting there as Toto Wolff, who's going, right, I'm a third owner in this team. For me, it's all about the dollars. I'm wanting a successful team. I'm wanting as much money coming in because in the end, it helps my back pocket. If I can have a really strong driver lineup for Mercedes and Mercedes wins, we attract sponsors, we attract dollars from winning the Constructors' Championship. If I can then have one of my drivers, which I'm hiring out to another team who can actually lift that team at the same time, there's value in it for Alpine. So they're going to go, yep, we'll pay dollars for that driver. So you're getting a driver who you're keeping in the sport because otherwise, if you don't have him sitting in Mercedes, where does he go? You look at that with Valtteri Bottas. You look at that with Sergio Perez at the moment, who they both don't have seats, and there is the potential that they could not come back. Now, with the 11th team coming in Cadillac, there's talk about Bottas and Perez going into there. Toto's just got a finger in all the pies.
So then Alpine's got Toto paying for all of Kimi's development and training. They get to use him for 12 months. They get him to win a few races, win some points, help develop the car, maybe get some sponsorship, get some interest. And then Toto's in the box seat because at the end of the year he goes, you know what, George, if you want to renegotiate a higher paid contract, well, maybe we don't need it. Maybe we give you a 1+1 or a 1 and we'll see what happens at the end of next year. And then we've still got access to Kimi to come back.
Yep. In the end, they're a commodity.
It makes a lot of sense in Toto's seat. When you're looking at it from a pure business perspective, it's, like it or hate it for George. But
look, unfortunately, I mean, this is where it's a market where you're buying the best performing commodity, and if you can develop talent, and you look at Red Bull, they're struggling at the moment because they haven't got a good talent pool which they're developing. They're lacking drivers. They don't have anyone they can replace at the moment.
We talked about that before, about what happens if Kimi doesn't work out or Liam doesn't work out. It's like, well, who's next? If Max does leave, what's next?
Exactly.
And it looks like it's going to be a big rebuild required over there, I think, in that garage and that team.
Yes, I think a lot to tell for the summer break. And I mean, as we've talked about Max's future, there are other options. So who else can afford him?
Well, yeah, that's what it comes down to. He's not a cheap prospect, is he? But he's probably worth every penny.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at an Alpine, they can't afford him. I mean, ultimately Alpine's essentially on the market at the moment, and Flavio's been brought in there to shape up the team potentially for a buyout. Ultimately, you look at Max. Really, his options are stay with Red Bull, and Red Bull want him. They've built the team around him, and it's Verstappen racing essentially. You got Mercedes, who he's courting with Toto, and we've talked about on the downshift Aston Martin. You mentioned just a moment ago with Adrian Newey. You've got Newey there as one of the most legendary car designers in the history of F1. You've got Lawrence Stroll, who's investing big dollars, and you've got Max, who at the moment he's testing a Aston Martin Red Bull branded GT3, and he's hasn't got a long-term desire to be in Formula One. He's talked about other interests in regards to endurance racing, GT3 racing, and for him, he'd be looking at whether or not he could actually have a stake in a team. And Lawrence is willing to allow people to have a share in Aston Martin to come across.
Well, Aston Martin's for sale pretty much, isn't it? I thought that was the rumours or the talk that it's sort of being prepped for, the Arabs to buy it or get some interest or build it up.
There's interest from the Middle East. I don't think Lawrence is actively going it's for sale, but I mean, everyone has a price.
He's not a silly businessman either.
No.
Him and Toto are, different backgrounds, but both very sharp when it comes to the dollars and cents in those teams.
Yeah. It's rumour and scuttlebutt. We're trying to make predictions in regards to things that are happening out there at the moment. To your point is, there's some photos of Max and Toto together, which were from previous years.
The Coldplay concert? Oh, sorry. No. The other incidents, yeah.
Were they the ones who got caught at Coldplay?
Yes. They've actually taken the original Toto and Max photos and put the CEO and his assistant on there. It's all been muddled up. So yeah, so lots going on. So speaking of rumours and scuttlebutt, there was a very small breaking story this week about one of our beloved team principals who's unfortunately come to the end of his tenure at his team. So we can't skip over the our favourite team principal, Christian Horner. I know last week we did a little, if you were Christian Horner right now, what would you be doing? And all that seems a little bit irrelevant because I think you're going to be trundling down to Centrelink to get your repayments for the next few weeks while you figure out what's going on. So after last week's podcast, the news broke that the longest-serving F1 team principal, Christian Horner, has been relieved of his operational duties on July 9th. So he'd been there for 20 years as principal and CEO, and he built that team up. Love him or hate him for all the stuff that's come out in the last couple of weeks around Christian and what happened, and the leaked videos of the team meeting where he gave his farewells, and which was quickly taken down, I think, from a few sites. But a lot of other memes or reels have come up where they just talk about what Christian achieved in his 20 years of being at Red Bull, and it's a pretty solid run sheet, pretty good things what he's managed to do there. So, but then he's just been shown the door with no official reason at this stage by the team, or I think that's all just keeping things a bit mum about what's going on.
Yeah, look, I've got to say, I'm really surprised how well controlled this has been, because this is big news, and there's a lot of loose lips in F1, and we even saw with Craig Slater that he had a unnamed source that talked about the emotion and the like that happened within Red Bull. Now, not only was this a shock to the F1 world, but it was also a shock to Horner. Horner wasn't expecting this. It came sort of from left field, and as you're saying, with no real official reason. You could see from the video that was shared online, he was quite emotional in regards to it. You could see that there were at Milton Keynes, a number of the staff who were quite emotional and shocked by it. Part of the meeting that he had on the Tuesday was that to allow him to say goodbye to the team. And so I think he was on campus for all of, I think, about an hour and a half, gave that address, then was able to just jump in the car and head off. What was telling was that you had Metchitz and Marco who were on the campus but weren't there for the address. They were actually in the factory next door. So just making sure that things were covered.
You're right. It's sort of been, for all the rumours that come around with Formula One and poor fake news and poor media outlets and all sorts of business that goes on that we're kind of wading through. Like, I think it was quite well controlled. He's apparently still just employed by Red Bull. He's just not doing the job he was doing at the in the public light of things. So
Yeah, he's on gardening leave until the end of this year.
yeah. So I think like you said, it's been controlled quite well. Maybe I don't know, a little too clinical perhaps, but I think it probably had to be. Otherwise, it was, I don't know, potentially get messy. A lot of people involved, but yeah.
And for me, this talks to some of the internal power struggles. What's of note is there's some notable departures at the same time as Horner. You saw the group chief marketing and commercial officer Oliver Hughes step down. You saw the group director of communications Paul Smith step down at the same time. If we go back to a little bit of history, Horner was a protected commodity in regards to Dietrich Mateschitz, who was the head of Red Bull. And so, Horner was one of his favoured few. And Mateschitz passed away in October of 22. So we saw that was a shift in regards to the protection around Horner. We saw the controversy with Horner in regards to with his personal assistant. We saw obviously Jos Verstappen and Max, that camp not being happy with Horner. But Horner was still backed by the Thai majority shareholder Nvidia, who's headed up by Nvidia, who supported him. So we've obviously seen a shift there because the Austrian faction only has 49% ownership in Red Bull, and so the Thais had to shift their vote.
I thought there was rumours that they actually sold part of their shares. I mean, again, there's lots of stuff floating around. So there were suggestions that the Thai arm sort of sold down some of their ownership, which then put the Austrian sort of arm in more of a controlling stance that allowed them to make these moves. But that sort of a bit irrelevant, really. Like, it sort of makes for an interesting story, and everyone wants to know what happened, and maybe in time we'll find out. But pained a bit about sort of having a special recording on the whole situation last week, but it was sort of like there was a lot of nothingness floating around in line and in the social media space. So it was sort of a bit like sort of reporting on Airyland, I think.
Yeah, it's everyone's opinions as to what they think may have happened. Again, none of us are any the wiser, regardless of where you are in the F1 world. I think, really in regards to it, we're still in the position where there's a lot of backroom negotiations and discussions. We're seeing that Horner is rumoured to be on gardening leave until the end of 2025, which, look, is normally what happens when a major team principal or CEO is stood down. You don't want them moving immediately to other rivals. Horner still had a 5-year contract to serve with Red Bull, so there's every indication that he will receive roughly around £60 million, or in Australian dollars, 123 million Australian dollars to pay out the rest of his contract. So, to your point, I don't think he's going to be ducking down to the Dole office anytime too soon.
Yeah. So we'll see that Horner gets replaced by Laurent Mekies, previous principal of the Red Bull sister team Racing Bulls, and an Alain Permain will be promoted or was promoted to team principal at Racing Bulls to fill Mickey's vacancy. So so it'll be interesting stuff to see what happens, what goes on now, like with those shuffles around of team principals. And it's bad enough when you sort of change drivers and go, here you go, you got to make the best of it for the rest of the season. Like, the team principals got to have a real probably shift in culture, which I don't know if that's the team principal's job necessarily, but he can certainly play a part to sort of...
Very much so. The team principal is, the guy who leads it all. The team, the drivers, they all make that come up. But, from that perspective we've seen a change in the team with Racing Bulls. Laurent has actually done a great job there. And so you can see that obviously Red Bull that's what they're looking for. Alain Permain, look, for those who aren't familiar with Formula One, Alain has been around for a long time. So he's a seasoned F1 professional. It'll be interesting to see what he brings to the Racing Bulls team. For me, it speaks to the fact that this was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in regards to Red Bull. They've decided to move Horner on, but they haven't had a really strong plan to backfill him. And
so, KT, reading about all this Christian Horner stuff sounds like more like a eulogy that's going on here. But so anyway, where to from here for Christian's future? Rumours and future move opportunities?
Look, I think for Christian, he's always wanted to have a stake in at a team. It's something which he's never been able to achieve with Red Bull. You can see that there's the political move to try and achieve that and get a share in the team, in the business, but never eventuated. So really, in regards to, I don't think we've seen the last of Christian Horner in Formula One, and nor do I think we wanted to see that. He's been a successful team principal and CEO for the last 20 years. What this means for Christian is that he'll be looking for an opportunity where he's actually going to have a stake in a Formula One team. So, from my perspective, there is rumour of Alpine being up for sale, or Flavio getting that ready for purchase. I could see Christian as being a part shareholder in Alpine. Again, 63 million euro payout from Red Bull. You're looking at the teams being at the bargain basement price of $1 billion. So you'd probably see, if he chips in a little bit more of his own money, potentially taking a 10% share. You may even see him team up with Otmar Safnauer, who has been talking around the traps for the last few months around having a consortium looking to either buy a team or pitch another team into Formula One.
He's keen to get back in, isn't he, as well? There's been a lot floating around in that space.
And wouldn't it be ironic to see him come and buy his old team back?
yeah. That didn't pass me by when I saw some of the rumors. I'm like, wait, didn't he get sacked by that team? Yeah.
The irony. So, but I mean, yeah. So anywhere Christian goes, they're going to need to offer him something, or he's going to need to buy in at some stage. So I see Alpine as a definite contention in regards to a purchase, a partnership with Otmar Safnauer in regards to having a share in that. And look, this is where we've spoken about it before with Max, Aston Martin. Lawrence Stroll is willing to give a stake in a team. We saw that with Adrian Newey. You could have Christian Horner come in and look, it's not such a silly idea to come in and take Aston Martin to that next level and be part of that.
You give him a performance-based rewards package that sees him become a part owner down the track, I'm sure he'd be right up his alley. But yeah, he'll be around the paddock in future, that's for sure.
Long to come. He's only 51, so he's not that old. Look, love him or hate him, you've got to look in regards to what he's contributed to the sport over the last 20 years. He was the youngest team principal at the age of 31, and famously quoted as saying, "Look, they gave me the keys and just told me to get on with it." And if you look at the scorecard, 405 races, 6 constructors championships, 8 drivers championships. He's done extremely well. So the last we've seen of Christian Horner.
I mean, obviously he was quite well known and well revered through the history. But then when you see some of these, particularly when they start putting him not up against, but when they show you love them, the graphs where they've got wins, and he's appearing at the top of a fair few lists there. But
and I'll pop that up there for our listeners, or for those people who are watching this on YouTube. You'll see from Formula One, they had the team principals years at the team, and Christian definitely outshines a lot of them. Next in line is Toto Wolff. So a lot of the other team principals have only been there for much shorter tenures. All right. So from all the news that we've had over the last couple of weeks, really excited to say that we're getting back into a race weekend.
Right. I know. Like I don't. You said earlier, I questioned whether this was the mid-year break, but it's not been the mid-year break. It's just been 2 weeks off of no racing, which feels like an eternity when we had a couple of weeks in quick succession and some good racing to watch. And now we have to sit on our hands for 2 weeks and just listen to rumours fly around. But now we get back into the real business, which is the Belgian GP, the Spa. So, this is looking like going to be a good track. So we got a circuit length of 7.004 kilometres, the longest track on the calendar. First Grand Prix in 1950, 44 laps, and fastest lap time set by none other than Sergio Perez in 2024 of a 1:44.701. So yeah, looking forward to it.
1950. It's one of the 7 original tracks when Formula One started. And if you don't love this track, then I don't know why you even follow Formula One.
Well, being new to Formula One, I'm looking forward to this one. It'd be good to get into it and start learning the layout and the track and learning all about it. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'll put up onto the graphic here because we've had a few of our listeners say it'd be really great to be able to see the track and see the corners we're talking about. This is an iconic track, and even if you're not a really passionate follower of Formula One, you'll see Raidillon onto En Rouge, which is that downhill coming into the quick left-hander up the hill. This is a speed track going onto the Kemmel Straight, where it's a DRS zone. Really technical. Drivers love this track. And if Huppy was on the pod today as well, we both race this in sim racing. So from that perspective, it's got some great sweeping corners, but some really tight corners as well. So you'll see from the start-finish line, you come into La Source, which turns back on itself. So you've got the cars which are taking turn 1 in first gear and then gearing all the way up to 8th, going onto the Kemmel Straight. And then when you get into the second sector, some great right-left-handers at 90 degrees, some hairpins. So you've just got a mix of absolutely everything on this track.
So turn 1's potentially Kimi bowling alley again, is it? Or
Could be. Or Liam's punching ground.
Liam's punching ground? Nice. Then it's going to be an interesting race.
Dan, you mentioned that the fastest lap time was from Sergio Perez back in 2024, so it gives us a good opportunity to review the 2024 race. This was a thrilling race. It was marked by some strategic gambles and a dramatic post-race twist, which set the stage just before going into the summer break last year. We saw Max Verstappen qualify in pole with the fastest time, but he actually received a 10th-place grid penalty for exceeding his engine component allocation. So they replaced the engine beyond the number of power units they're allowed. So that actually put Charles Leclerc into pole position for the start of the race. The race over the 44 laps actually saw George Russell take the victory.
George, our good mate George.
And we spoke about this a little bit earlier, George leading the team. He actually made a bold one-stop strategy. He came over the radios questioning that they could do a one-stopper. Lewis, who chose to take 2 stops, finished the race in second behind George. In fact, half a second behind George at the end of the race. But unfortunately, George was disqualified post-race because his car was found to be 1.5 kilograms under the minimum weight requirement of 798 kilos. So unfortunately, carton of milk. Yep. So, but then look, there's some controversy in regards to being able to go around the track and pick up the marbles. As you see, the drivers do go and drive on the side of the track to pick up as much rubber to add weight to the car, because it can add up to around 2 kilos to the car on that warm down lap. So, yeah. With that, the results were after Russell's disqualification. It promoted Lewis to first place. This marked his 105th career victory and his second of the season. And it was his final victory before he left Mercedes to go to Ferrari. We saw Oscar, just the on-form driver around this place. I mean, both Lewis and Oscar over the last 4 races both got 80 points each in regards to their performance. So he was promoted to second, and then Charles took third, which was his first podium since Monaco.
And that was sort of the early days when we didn't know who Oscar was yet and how good he was. He did some good work last year.
Look, I think notably as well, this is where Max, as I said, he did take a 10-place grid penalty because of taking a new engine. He went from P11 to P4. So just a phenomenal result.
Outstanding, isn't it? You know, he's managed that a few times this year too. He hasn't always qualified at the top end, but when he's qualified down a few places, you just can't rule him out. He's going to be there.
Yeah, he knows how to drive the socks off the car. So yeah. And we only had one retirement, which was Zhou Guanyu in the Kick-Saber because he had a hydraulics failure. So we had a pretty good finish for the majority of the field. So as we then go into this year, take us through just the start of Spa for 2025.
Yeah, so as much as you love it, this is going to be another sprint race. We all love a sprint race.
Do we?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Look, I think, the sprint has been introduced for the non-F1 fans who give them a bit of a nice fast race to get through. But it takes away the practice rounds for setting up the cars. The drivers aren't too keen on it as well, because in the end, you've got to save the car for the main race.
Yeah, it changes it, doesn't it? What people are doing for the sprint portion of the race compared to the real race. And, sure, it's great to see some drivers win in the sprints, but yeah, it's It's like a measured practice race, isn't it? Like a practice race with points on it.
You called it practice race with points. So we've got a mix of corner types, fast sections. The main difficulty of the teams here is getting the aerodynamic balance right. What will be interesting for me is seeing what Ferrari do. We've seen Ferrari with a number of upgrades to the car. Again, rumoured to have another rear suspension upgrade for either this race or the one following. So what will happen there?
Yeah, well, they did okay in Silverstone, but not quite at the pointy end. But there was a lot going on in that race, so that was a bit of a challenge. But look, hopefully they Ferrari are getting closer to what they need to be doing. I don't think it bridged that gap, are they, to first place? But I think they just need to get some confidence in the car and the mix of the team and what they can achieve, and with a view to really nailing it in 26.
Yeah, well, look, you look at Lewis, who you got a fourth place at Silverstone now. Spa isn't as aggressive on the tyres as a Silverstone or a Suzuka, so there is a bit of degradation with the tyres, but you may see that actually plays in Ferrari's favour.
And it's looking like a pretty clear race all weekend, not a lot of rain.
No, so with Spa, given that this is in the Ardennes region, there's a lot of moisture in the air around the forest area, so it's never predictable. There is a 20% chance of rain for the Sunday race. Rain always makes things a little bit interesting.
It's a little bit.
I think it allows us to jump in very nicely to our predictions. Now, look, I have received messages from Huppy and Lockie. They didn't want us to go and make their predictions for them, so
Why not? It's not like anything ever bad's come out of them not putting their predictions in.
Look, from all of us getting 0 points from the last round, what's the worst that could possibly happen?
Exactly.
No.
Well, that was my theory.
So, look, what I'll do is we'll run through both Huppy and Lockie's predictions. So, Huppy's got
Lockie and Grok's position.
Lockie and Grok. Okay, well, let's start with Grok then. So Lockie's put Lewis for pole. Yep. Followed by Oscar in first place.
Was that the 8 ball talking?
I don't know if they took the 8 ball with them on holiday. So, we'll have to see if we can get a picture of Lockie on the beach with an 8 ball. So Lewis for pole, with Oscar taking first place, Charles in second, and Lando in third. So I don't know what's happened to Lewis in regards to that, but hasn't been able to finish it up for the race. If we go over to Huppy's predictions, nothing out of the ordinary for Huppy. Oscar, Lando, and Max. So copy paste. I
mean, you're probably going to be over a whole season. You're probably going to be pretty good with that, aren't you? It's a pretty safe bet.
Well, you'd hope so, but it hasn't worked for him in the last couple of races.
Well, yeah, it's got to work eventually. Maybe he's running with the numbers. It's my week. This is my week.
Before we get to the fan favourite, which is the magical hat, I'll throw my predictions in, and then we'll build up to the excitement of your predictions, Dan. So look, for me, as much as I put it on Huppy for doing a bit of a cut and paste, I'm doing a little bit of cut and paste for myself as well. I'm going to put Oscar for pole. We've seen Lando do very well over the last 2 races. Oscar really needs to really stamp it down and say, no, I'm the championship leader here. And so It's up to him to make sure that this happens. So I've got Oscar for pole and Oscar for the win. I'm actually putting George Russell for second. Based on his performance last year, I think that he's got it in him. And given that, the race temperature, while it's going to be a little bit warm at 30 degrees, I'm hoping to see George pull out a second place with Lando coming in third.
George for second. Wow.
George for second.
I mean, look, I always hope George does well because he's got it in him. It's just, I think for him, it's just a bit of how it falls on the day a bit. Like it's not that he did it badly. It's how other teams sort of around him managed to, I don't know, do things. So anyway, enough waffling about someone else's average predictions. Let's get on to the real business here.
Hey!
The magic hat. Yeah, we've got to get some sound effects for that. Yep. Well, there you go. I'm going to do what everyone else is doing. So I got Oscar Piastri
for pole.
Right? So I'm not too dissatisfied with that. Just a disclaimer, I've taken Esteban Ocon out and Isaac Hadjar is out, and I haven't put Nico in as much as I'd love to put Nico in because that was just sensational. That was a little bit of a fluke, and he's not quite in my top Well, this is really the top 8 now.
Poor
He's not
Nico.
quite in my top 8 yet, but anyway, we'll get there. All right. Okay, so I got the winner. He's going to be Max. I'm going for the top down because I think that's fair. And second
place.
Wow. Okay. Lewis.
Ooh.
Lulu. Yep. Which I'd love to see Lewis win. If I can only pull George out now, I'd be really happy.
Oh, you picked 2 out.
I got 2 stuck together, but I did kind of dodge it a little bit because that was George.
Georgie.
It is George.
Okay. Handsome George for third.
There you go. So that's
all
how
right,
it's going to be.
Oscar for pole, Max for first, Lewis for second, and George for third.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. Oscar will stay. Oscar's going to win it.
Who's to know?
They're not. Yeah, if I do the same as everyone else, I'll never get anywhere ahead. So,
well, you never know. It could completely turn around, and we'll see something completely different.
We could.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for listening. As we've said, we've got Spa coming up for the weekend. So really looking forward to having a weekend where we know what to do on Sunday night as opposed to having to talk to our families.
Oh, my goodness. That was hard.
Come next week, we should have the entire team back together to do a review of the race. So be sure to like and subscribe so that you're kept up to date in regards to the next episodes that drop. And until then, we'll see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of the Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.